flip forward there. So there you go. In what year was the last time a Forum Daily newspaper did not win the Vance Trophy? You know, the Forum won this year, correct? Congrats to the Forum. So write down your guesses, and at the end of the meeting, we'll reveal the answer. Spoiler, the prize is not any better than the prize was last month. So, moving right along, you know, last month, Alicia mentioned these page skeletons. We didn't have a lot of time to get through them, so she's going to start things off. She's got a lot of good information here for you. If you have questions as we go along, please do ask them. Chances are, if you have a question, someone else has that same question. So just pipe in as you think of it. So take it away, Alicia.
All right. Yeah, we're going to talk about skeletons to just kind of give you some context as to what's going on, where we're at. I just want to say that this year, as some of you may know, is the 5th anniversary of the founding of the Design Hub. May 5th of 2016 is when the initial designers were called into a room and told they were part of a hub. And so we've come a long way since then. And I just kind of want to take you back to talk about what we were doing at that point and how that's changed. So let's go back in time with me, if you will, to every Sunday for months after the hub started. Any of those Sundays, pick a Sunday, and guess what I was doing. If you guessed talking to Kelly Bolden, you are correct. Every Sunday, I would do Kelly's opinion page, which was Wilmer's most difficult page, because as you know, Kelly's a stickler and wants to make sure it's perfect every time. So he would budget for it. I would do the page. Something would be too long. Something would be too short. So I'd send him a PDF proof through PageTrack. He'd use the PageTrack editing tools to cross out sentences and add things and tell me all the changes he wanted to make. And then he'd send it back to me and I'd make the changes and then I'd send it back to him and we'd go back and forth. Again, literally, it would be hours of back and forth to make sure that we got his opinion page set up exactly the way that Kelly wanted it set up. And I will say that I did ask Kelly's permission to to bring this up. And, you know, it was a lot. It was a lot of back and forth. And a lot of our pages at the beginning of the hub were like that. And I know that many of you were there and remember that. So if you can now come back here to the present day and let's go to this past Sunday. What do you think I was doing this past Sunday? If you guessed working on Wilmer's opinion page, you would be correct. My life doesn't change all that much in the past 5 years. As you can see, I took some footage of me working to share with you. So the big question here is, what was Kelly Bolden doing on Sunday? And the answer to that question is that I have absolutely no idea what Kelly Bolden was doing on Sunday, but lucky for him, it did not involve talking to me. Kelly and I did not have to talk once. He budgeted his opinion page. I did his opinion page. I had the page done in less than 15 minutes. I had no questions, and Kelly got to enjoy his Sunday instead of speaking to me. So what's the secret to Kelly Bolden's freedom, and how can you too talk less to me? It's skeletons. So the skeletons, they're magic, you guys. So what is a skeleton? We kind of tried to talk about this last time, but I think what I probably did was confuse more of you than help you understand things. So a skeleton is simply, it's just a framework for a page. And the main purpose of it is to streamline communication between editors and designers. There's no pun intended here when I say it's to make us so we're all on the same page. So we're clear on what we're all trying to accomplish, what we want, and we can get there together. So here's how it will work is once you sign up to do skeletons, then you will receive a skeleton book that we'll put together for you. And inside that book will be multiple options for different pages. So this is a couple of pages out of Wilmer's skeleton book. So when you're going to budget a page, you pick the skeleton for that page based on what page it is, how many stories you have on that page, and what ads look like for that page. So on this page, you can see these two skeletons on the right are the same version of an A1 for the West Central Tribune with 3 story starts. One of them has the banner ad that they sell on it, and one of them doesn't. So the skeletons all are named based on these pieces of things. So it'll be easy for you to flip through. You go to your A1, and then if you know you want 4 stories to start or 3 stories to start, so you go A1.3 is the 3 story starts, and then .1 would be the version of it that it is. So you'll have multiple options for an A1 with 3 story starts. So if you pick version 1, that's what you'll get, version 2, version 3. And then there's also a version 1.add, which is the one that has the add on it, or a .vertical, which is the one that has the vertical CP. To start with, when we start somebody on skeletons, we're not giving you a ton of options, simply because we don't want to make it overwhelming and make the learning curve any harder than it has to be. We build the skeletons based on, we go back a few months of your A1s and build them based on your most commonly requested designs. And then as you request more, we'll add them to your books. So this is what one of the skeletons looks like and what the budget for that will look like. So this is the opinion page that I did on Sunday for Kelly. So he picked opinion 4. So you can see on the left here that opinion 4, this is the basic of what it's going to look like. And then on the left is all of the positions on the page as they're labeled here. So position 1, and then along with this, it has the headline for it. So it's a 30-point headline over 4 decks, and each deck can have 10 characters. So then you can write the headline exactly that fits in that space. And then it tells you how many words fit there. And when there's things like the standing head or column sigs, we make sure that we include that. This one, you can also see body copy without reader opinion submissions box. That's simply because, that's an optional thing on their opinion page, depending on whether or not they need that space for whatever editorial or column that they're running in that position. So if you look on the right here, you can see how Kelly formatted this budget. In this case, all of these things were linked and set properly. So he did not put the full budget lines, depending on what page it is. Obviously, if it's an A1, you're going to want the full budget line in terms of art and things like that. This being an opinion page, we know what those art things look like. So we just need to know which one goes in number 3, which one goes in number 5. So Kelly just put this together, and that was all the information I needed to put together the page exactly the way that he was envisioning it, the way he requested it. He had the word counts were all as I needed them, and the headline counts were all as I needed them. So that is how Kelly got his Sunday back and didn't have to speak to me. On the right here, I do want to draw attention to, on the bottom, you can see WCT head, States Rural Legislators Continue Minneapolis Hatred. That is because this story that he put in slot number 5, this Mike McFeely column, that's not a local story from Wilmer, obviously. So he was pulling that from the FNS Digest. And we do not want editors to take the time to make a whole new document for stories that you're pulling from FNS just to rewrite the headline. So what we do in that case is, as you can see here that Kelly did, is just write what the headline should be that fits your space on your budget. So the designer will just copy and paste it onto your page. So you get the headline you want without the work of, you don't have to create any extra files or anything like that. We don't want to make you go to all of that trouble. And that's the magic of skeletons. You just put that together, and then, like I said, you get exactly the page that you want. So a couple of things about skeletons that I want to go over, just to clarify some things and to make sure that I'm really upfront with you about how all of these work. Skeletons are not templates. I'm not calling them skeletons just because there are better gifts of skeletons than there are of templates. It's because they're not designed to be a template. It's just a framework for the page. So as you can see, this is one that Kelly brought up when I was talking to him earlier this week about skeletons as a page that he really liked, an example of how the designer strayed from the skeleton to build something better for the readers. And Kelly talked about how much easier this page was because the 2 stories on the page that were not the CP were very easy to do, to get figured out. They were squared away much, much earlier in the day. And the sizes and everything were all set. So the designer had the time to focus on making that CP package shine and to get Wilmer what they wanted with that, because there wasn't the time of going back and forth about headlines and should this rail be 1 column or 2 columns and should the photo for the rail be on the front. Wilmer was able to say, this is what we want it to look like. And the designer said, okay, this is the size that I have and I'm going to work with it. And as you can see, That design varies from the skeleton. You know, it's got an additional photo. The headline's a different number of decks and looks different. But it's just built around that framework. There is definitely a learning curve to skeletons. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I'm going to give you your skeleton book and you'll be using them the next day and they're going to be super easy and your time's going to be saved immediately. It's going to take a while to be familiar with the options that you have, be familiar with fitting the pieces in, budgeting them correctly, working on the headlines, these pieces of things. But I do want to say that, you know, in preparation for this, I spoke with 4 newsrooms that have been using the skeletons regularly now. And I spoke with people in all 4 of those newsrooms, and everyone told me that it was worth the learning curve, that they are helpful, that on the back end, they're saving time, and that everybody said that, you know, once they get used to it, it became easier and easier and easier and easier. And the headlines, again, I want to be honest, that's what people have reported to me is the most difficult part right now, is working on rewriting those headlines. And that's going to be a varying degree of difficulty depending on who you have working on these pages, just based on, you know, people who have page design experience or maybe a little more used to thinking in character counts and coming up with those shorter words and stuff like that. Some people, it's going to take them a little bit longer to get used to that. But that's going to be the most difficult part, is just working on those headline characters. So Mark asked, how many A1 skeletons are there, for instance? It varies by paper. We are doing, for most papers, we're doing a 3-story start, a 4-story start, and a 5-story start. And we're having 3 to 4 options set up for those right off the bat. And then we add more as it's requested. So in talking to people and talking about what's been making things easier for them, and in brainstorming things that we can work on to help make these easier for all of you, because the goal of this is to make things easier across the board for everyone. It comes down a lot to really having the front line help you, having your reporters work on this to bring them into how this works. Share your skeletons with your reporters. Make sure they know what they look like, what they're doing. If you're having somebody work on a story that you know you want to be your A1 CP, you can let them know the headline's going to end up being this big. You know, we need the short header for the big letters, and, you know, tell them what you're looking for. Remind them of the importance of sticking, you know, with their budgeted word counts or updating you so that you're not using a skeleton expecting that you're going to have 700 words, and then all of a sudden you've got 1,400 words, and then it's a different story entirely. Talk to them about, as they are working on the story, writing headlines of varying lengths so that they can come up with those ideas for you. Even if by the time you get to editing, you don't like the headline ideas they came up with, they're still in the best position to have those headline ideas as they're writing the story. So it's going to make it easier for you if they've written you several options, and then you can just tweak them or reword them, or at least use them as a jumping off point. These are things that are going to make things a lot easier for you. As you're going through and you're kind of thinking through headline options, you can put multiple options in the notes for designers. You know, if you've got one that you know is going to be 2 decks and you're not totally sure how it's going to break and how it's going to look like when it breaks, you know, you can write multiple options. As you're editing a story, if you don't know where it's going to go, while you're reading it, if you want to write a shorter headline and a longer version, depending on, you know, so that way once you decide where it's going to go, you've got options. All of these things are going to help you when you go to make your skeleton. It's going to make things easier. And we are working on something that we will be talking with reporters about later, that I can help your reporters with some of these things in terms of headlines and stuff. I can give them a little bit of training on best practices for that, and how to help this system and make your lives easier without it taking a large amount of time for them, because of course I know reporters are also under the same time constraints the rest of us are.
One quick note, you know, of course we're talking a lot about writing SEO headlines for SEO. So this would just, you know, I wouldn't lose sight of that. You know, that's why there's a note here about, you know, maybe writing more than one, because all of our platforms, you know, use headlines differently. So, you know, in the middle of this, we can't lose sight of course, all the other things that we're talking about. In the digital side.
Yep, exactly. And that's where, you know, that notes field can really come in handy. So the headline that you put up in your headline can be that longer one that's written for SEO for the web. But then at the same time that you're writing a story or editing that story, in the notes field, you can put a shorter version that's going to work for print while you're focused on that story and think of it, so that nobody has to come back in later down the line and go, okay, let me read this story now again and remember what it's about so that I can write, a print version. It's just about being more efficient and best use of time in doing that. But definitely, yes, not overlooking the importance of the digital piece and the digital headlines this week.
And Q actually has a separate field for a print headline if you wanted to put the primary option there.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely options there. And again, like I said, I am willing to work with, whoever wants to talk to me more about this on how we can work and make these easier, because again, the goal is to make things easier across the board. So that's ties into the benefits of the skeletons. The skeletons are designed, I want to be really clear about this. This is not, this is going to make IMOP's job easier and it'll make yours harder, and we don't care. It's not this is something that we've designed to make your job easier, and it's going to be harder on us. It's designed that once we've got them in use and we're used to them across the board, it is going to make things easier for all of us. On the design side, it's going to allow designers to work faster. It's going to eliminate the miscommunications and the needs for designers to go into Slack and ask questions. That's going to help us cut down on errors because there's going to be less rushing, and it's going to help us improve our quality. For example, that Wilmer cover that we looked at earlier, our designers right now are averaging about 2 pages an hour. So imagine the designer has half an hour for that page. It would not be uncommon in the way that we have to sometimes go back and forth in Slack and ask, this headline's too long. Would you like that trimmed? Do you want this photo on the front? For figuring out those pieces around the CP of, what's the skybox going to look like? All of that could take 20 minutes. So that designer has half an hour for that page, and they've now used 2/3 of that time on the outside pieces, and now they have 10 minutes left to work on that CP. When it's done with the skeleton, then all of those other pieces are set up exactly the way they need to be. So that's 20 minutes of time that the designer doesn't have to spend going back and forth, that you as the editor don't have to spend in Slack answering the designer's questions. All of those pieces then can take 5 minutes to do. I mean, it's very possible to do all of those outside pieces in 5 minutes. And now that designer has potentially 25 minutes that they can spend on working to make your CP pop and make it outstanding quality for your readers. So by 150% now, we've increased the amount of time that the designer can spend on giving you a quality page. On your end, like I said, it's going to cut down on these designer questions. The back and forth in Slack is going to be cut down. You're not going to have to be as available because a lot of the questions, I mean, if you look through all of our Slack rooms, as I do often, the questions that are going back and forth, a lot of them are things that are answered by skeletons. It's, this doesn't fit, this headline's too long. Is it okay if I trim this? There's not enough room on this page for all of these stories. Which one can I drop? I need a photo. All of those things, all of that back and forth can be totally eliminated, or almost totally eliminated. There's always going to be, a couple of things come up, but it's going to be largely eliminated by using the skeletons. Again, once you get used to them, and that's a big part of why it's going to be worth your time, because then you could have your evenings back, or you could focus on whatever else. It just allows that communication with the hub to be streamlined, because before the designer even gets to the page, you've efficiently communicated exactly what you're looking for and what your expectations are, and made sure that what you're giving us fits into that. It's also going to mean that you have fewer things to juggle when it comes to print production, because you're going to kind of front load the work that you're doing into the budget. So when you're building your budget, you're building your skeleton, that's going to be the main work of the print production. And then after that, the pages will kind of more take care of themselves. You'll still have to be available for some things, but the times for that are going to be more predictable. It's going to be, I know that I usually hear about 3:45 from the layout center about whether I have class overflow. So I know that I need to be paying attention at that time so that I can figure out what I want to do with the class overflow page. I know that when I link the last A1 story, it usually takes, X number of minutes before I see my proof. So I know that I just linked the last A1 story and I'll check back in half an hour. It's going to make those things more predictable, and it's going to make things a lot less hectic when it comes to the print production piece of things. Once these are functioning throughout the company and they're working the way that we need them to work, a big thing that we're going to be able to do is revisit the content deadlines that we have. I know a number of you are not super pleased with some of your content deadlines, especially in terms of that advanced content that has to be in 2 days early, how late we can have news content, how late some of your sports content can do, more of those things. Doing this to streamline the communication, make sure that, okay, here's the late news story and we know exactly the space that it's going to go in and we know that it's going to be written to fit those pieces. It's going to cut down on the wait time, the traffic jams, all of those other issues that are huge parts of the reason that we've had to set up the content deadlines the way that we have. So the future of Skeletons is you having more time to work on content. Just in general, getting your time back so you can do whatever. Again, there's going to be a learning curve. It's going to take a while to get used to them. But once you do, it's really going to make the print or e-paper production part of your job easier. So that's going to give you time back where you can be focusing on your digital content. You can be focusing on editors and or editing these things with your team members, generating story ideas, working with your reporters, all of those things, whatever else you could be doing to better use that time. I have a question just popped up. Renee says it would save time if the stories from FNS directly from their budget with Skeletons read every FNS story in order to rewrite every headline to fit the skeleton choice. Yes, Kirsten can speak more to this, but we are having discussions about how we work with FNS and how the FNS content is set up to offer things like more headline options and things like that to make the skeleton piece of things easier for you when it comes to that shared content. That's absolutely something that's being worked on.
Yeah, we're actually starting on some of the e-papers we're working on. FNS is starting to work with these. So once we, I would expect that we'll have some of this ironed out as we continue to experiment with them on our end.
So that was me telling you that skeletons are great and all the reasons that I think skeletons are great. But of course, you don't have to take my word for it. And I know, we're journalists in this room. We're not just going to take one person's word anyways. You need multiple sources. So Kelly and Wilmer, Luke and Mitchell, Matt in Brainerd, and Rick in Duluth have all been using these. So I will zip my lip for a little bit so they can just take a moment to share with you their experiences of using skeletons.
I can jump in. This is Matt in Brainerd. So far, we've only used it on A1. The one benefit is you get to pick what your page looks like, which is nice. We haven't seen a time savings. Where we might answer a question on 2 headlines, now we're doing all of them. And it's hard sometimes to force a headline into a specific character count. That's been an issue. And Alicia, I've been wondering, are we going to have to do inside pages? Because I think that would consume our time. Rewriting every headline, waiting for wire, working with ad stacks. There's all these concerns I have with inside pages. The cover, yeah, it takes more time than it did. You got to pick a skeleton, rewrite headlines when they come in. We try to work with the reporters as much as we can, but they don't know page design. They don't understand character counts and decks and things like that. But those are our biggest concerns, that this is actually could take up more of our time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I totally get that. In terms of the issues reported, that's again, like I was talking about that training, I would love to take the time to help reporters understand that piece so that they can help you more with that. Right now, we're not talking about a timeline for rolling everybody into inside pages because we do realize that there are significant issues that we need to figure out right now. And the headline piece of things and figuring out how, when we're sharing stories among each other, when FNS stories are coming in, that we're working out that headline piece. That's a big part of that. Right now, we want to get everybody on A1s and inside covers, and then some other inside pages, like Opinion, where it's going to make your, think of an opinion editor's job. I mean, I know you do opinion, Matt, to think of, if you've got an exact word count and you don't have to figure out like, well, it's 450 and that usually fits close, and, to figure out some of those pieces. The end goal is, yes, to do all of the pages, but we need to figure out how to do that in a way that it absolutely is a time savings for everyone. And we figure out a way that we can best work it around ad stacks as well, because of course it's not possible to set up an inside skeleton for every possible ad stack you can have on an inside page.
Yeah,
I think it's safe to assume that at each step of this process, we're going to evaluate it. before we take the next step.
This is Luke and Mitchell. For us, the headlines before the skeletons were our biggest issue. For me, I'd spend some time trying to write an interesting, witty headline, and then the end of the night, you got to take out some of the good words that you had or whatever and rewrite the whole thing. This way, what we've done is it helps the workflow, I think, because we set the skeleton early in the day, and then I put right on our budget the amount of characters that each spot allows. And then the reporters know the difference between the web headline and then the print headline in Q, and they just set it themselves. And it just, for us, it's made things a lot smoother. We've enjoyed it. And I would agree as far as the covers. I think the covers is where the skeletons work well. I'm a little skeptical about the inside pages, but if they work as well as the covers have for us, that'll be great.
Yeah, one thing we found at the DNT is, agreed on the headlines. That's a little bit of a challenge and something we're getting better at, and we'll need to work with the reporters more on the front end with. But particularly when we have maybe an inexperienced designer or somebody that has more questions maybe on a given night, the skeleton I think really helps that communication. They know more exactly what we're looking for, and it saves us time during the evening going back and forth with a lot of questions. So that's been our experience with it. These things always have a little bit of a learning curve, and you kind of grow into it. But I think for the most part we've appreciated it. We're looking at maybe giving some other ideas for A1 skeletons that we could use going forward to give us some more options. I think that's always a good thing too. But I think it has cut down on a lot of the back and forth that you would see on Slack, especially with designers that are maybe new with the company or with the hub.
We've got a couple of things people have popped in the chat. JJ says it seems like something like opinion pages would be easier to know the character counts of headlines for print, as the page is already quite formatted. Opinion pages, our opinion pages really are already kind of using a skeleton. We're just making it a little bit more formal to make it easier for all of you to set up, so that you'll have that exact, word count at the different headline sizes, so that designers aren't trying to resize headlines, and then perhaps the headline that you wanted to be a little bit larger, you were envisioning larger, ends up smaller, those pieces of things. Nancy asked what designers say about skeletons, if they feel like they're losing creativity and becoming more like robots. The feedback from the designers on the skeletons has been largely positive. They were initially quite concerned about that, which was part of making it clear that these aren't templates, that they're a framework to work around. And so there was some hesitation initially, but in actual practice, they've been really helpful to the designers, again, because it eliminates a lot of that back and forth and allows them to just focus on, giving the quality to the pieces that deserve the quality. When you're doing, an opinion page, it's important to get it right, as it's important to get all of the pages right, but it doesn't require the kind of time and creativity that doing an A1CP does. And so being able to streamline, rail and strip stories so that you can focus on the CP, getting the opinion page done faster so you have more time for that life cover that you have, has been really helpful to designers, and they've really been appreciating that. We haven't been able to see the full rewards of that lately, just because, as many of you know, I've got multiple people who are out on extended leave. And so we're sort of working to cover things and haven't been able to give as much attention as we would normally to those kinds of things. But that's a huge part of this, is being able to make the things that can go faster, be faster, so that then the things that deserve more of our time and attention, so that we can provide a higher quality product, be more creative, and really do more fun things for you, your readers, and your advertisers. That's where we want to be focusing the time, and this is going to help us. And Jeff Beach suggests we change Q, so there are multiple headline fields: label, main head, deck head. And Luke and JJ both say they like that idea. I'm not in charge of Q, but I love that idea too. And then Kelly said his microphone's not working today. Skeletons have a learning curve, but we got used to it. Editors are getting better at the process. Design is very receptive to feedback, and he urges people to give it a try. So if any of you are interested in trying the page templates, if you want to get on the list to be next to start them, please let me know. If you want to have a one-on-one discussion with me about it first, again, let me know. I'm available. Like I said, I really want this to be something that works across the board for everybody, for all of us. So questions. Jenny said, are there going to be skeletons for tabs like Ag Week and the Farmer's Forum? Yes, absolutely, Jenny. We could 100% do that. The goal is to have that all of our regular publications will have the skeletons available. What other questions do y'all have?
I don't have a question, but I could try to address Jeff Beach's question about Q. You know, currently we only have the web headline and the print headline field. There is some talk about making some tweaks to that. I mean, I don't think it's going to be imminent, but we are undergoing a review of Q and whether it offers all the fields that we want, or if it's frankly even the right CMS for us moving forward. So, you know, I can talk to developers about that. There has been some discussion in the past about adding additional fields, but that development work would need to be done on our end to deploy that. So not yet, but possibly in the future is the best answer, I think.
Thanks, Steve. What else? I'm looking in your faces and I can tell that there's questions. It's okay if you don't want to ask in front of everybody. You all have my number. Give me a call, send me an email, carrier pigeon, whatever. I'm available. Like I said, it's important that this is something that works for all of us. And we want to make sure that that's what we're doing, is figuring out how to make this help everybody. And whatever we can do to make that happen is what we want to do. And that's why. Yep.
Alicia, I just have a quick question because I came in just a tad late on this thing. Is it just A1s or what other section covers are you talking about using these on?
So any inside cover. Yep. So a sports cover, and then, you know, other pages like the opinion page and so Kelly says Wilmer's using it for their sports cover right now. You know, Mitchell's using it on sports covers. Duluth, I know we have the sports covers ready. I'm not sure if y'all are using those quite yet, but so we've got a lot of options, but it is especially useful right now on those covers because it really allows you to figure out what you want. For sports covers, they're especially helpful just because of kind of what we talked about earlier, that, you know, when things are coming in at different times, if we know exactly how much space on the page we're expecting things to take up, it makes it a lot easier for us to get things on there and get them ready. For example, so if you've got, you know, your late sports CP, if we already have the rest of the page figured out and we know where the jumps are going and everything like that, when we get to the point where we can revisit content deadlines, we can potentially have more time for that sports CP because there's not going to be, okay, now it's in, and then we have to juggle all the jumps and make sure that they all fit. And, you know, maybe I'm going to have to redo the size of how I've got this on A1 to make everything fit correctly because we've figured out the pieces in advance.
Is anybody doing this now that has any experience on how the difference is between print days, or if there is any difference between print days and e-page days?
This is Matt. There's been no difference. We are just doing A1 right now. We haven't jumped to B yet, just because we need to train our sports guys who are editing late. But there's been no difference. We've treated them the same.
Yep, and the skeletons that we've got set up are the same. As we're building new skeletons, we're working on determining best practices and what's going to be easiest on the site level when it comes to also dealing with that e-paper ad that all of you have now on your A1s, so we can accommodate those on the print days and that piece of things. All right, other questions? Renee is asking, couldn't designers be able to take stories that are ready on the FNS budget as they're ready and not wait for individual properties to grab them as they're ready? That would save time. We have done that in the past, and honestly, if I could figure out a way to do that we could make sure that we were doing it without the potential for errors or things like that, I'm absolutely open to figuring out a way that we can return to doing that. The problems that we ran into were that, sometimes those stories come in quite differently than what they are budgeted at. Sometimes it's going to be, a 400-word story about something, and then, in the course of reporting, things take a turn and the budget line doesn't always get updated. Suddenly it's, it's a 900-word story, or the focus is a little bit different, or, news is always developing, and so sometimes things don't always match the budget line. And so what we were finding was that, the story that we were pulling and then placing wasn't always what the editor was expecting, and then it was leading to some unhappiness there. And so, in the interest of allowing editors to retain their control of their product, that's the largest piece of why we stopped doing that.
If I could also jump in on that a little bit with FNS stories, is with so many different deadlines, we have different and updating versions of the same story coming in. And I've encountered a few instances where an early version of a story is placed on the page and out of the way when the local editors really want to jump in and have the updated version that's coming later. So having them have that own flexibility to link the story up to their page when they have the version that they want, that might be a little tough to manage if designers are just going free for all on the FNS budget.
Yep. Yeah. So it's figuring out a lot of the pieces of handling the updates, and when is this story updated enough for the readers of one community might be different from the readers of another community, and placing those decisions in the hands of designers can sometimes lead us to issues. So.
Jeff Beach has a good question here in the chat. How do the jump pages work?
Right now, because we are doing inside pages, so on your cover, for the cover, the A1 skeletons do say how many words will fit on the cover. So that if you've got a 700-word story and the cover piece says that 250 words are fitting on the cover, that you've got an additional 450 words to jump, and so where to jump. And so as Kelly said, WIMR's just using the story and the skeleton words counts and figuring out the jump space as needed. So you would just subtract the cover word count from the total word count of that story to know how much space you have to jump.
Speaking of Kelly, is Kelly in space?
It does appear that he is, yes.
All right. Just checking.
It's nice that somebody's eating
Are you
travel.
talking about his background or general condition?
Oh, that's why his mic isn't working, because of being in space. That's true. In space, no one can hear you scream or talk about how great skeletons are. Just a fact about space.
Okay. Okay, we're moving on to the cat face now in the Zoom call, so I think we probably could move on from skeletons and touch briefly on what we've got here for the rest of the meeting. As Alicia said, feel free to reach out to her. I think it would I'm sure that Kelly and Rick and Luke and Matt Erickson would be happy to answer some questions about their experience too. So reach out to them, and if you want to give it a try, then just reach out to Alicia. Just if we wanted to touch on a few things, and then we'll talk a little bit about our coverage plan for the Chauvin trial. First, email newsletters. Those are our top performing conversion tactics. And as we all know, government and politics scored high on our reader surveys. So in the coming weeks, we're going to test 3 newsletters from the 3 state capitals we cover. The one from Bismarck will be tested in Grand Forks and Fargo. The one from St. Paul will be tested in Rochester. And then, of course, the Pier one will be tested in Mitchell. We'll expand those depending on the results. If they're popular, we'll move to add those to different markets. They'll be curated to the degree that a special tag will be used. So the bureau reporters will identify the top stories of the week, the enterprise stories, and they'll add the right tags to those, so they'll flow into the newsletters. Matt Corey, can you talk just briefly about the changes of wire posting and incoming board?
Sure. As you know, several papers are moving to different print deadlines. That forced a move for us to reevaluate how we're scheduling on the copy desk. And so we're going to be a little more heavy staffed during the day, Monday through Friday. And it became a time that we thought we could help the engagement team. And we will start taking over the daily wire postings Monday through Friday. Yeah, that's it. A lot of times we get questions about why a wire story was posted anyway, so that'll streamline it. So it'll be done by the copy desk Monday through Friday. On the weekends, the engagement team will help us out in the early mornings. That's about wire posting. For the incoming board, yeah, we just urge everyone, all the papers out there, if you have interesting articles, stories, briefs, that you think will do well beyond just your market, please put them on the incoming board. Let us know about them in Slack. These these are odd crime news, fatal accidents. We always post out, but then some interesting features from time to time. Not saying we're going to use them all, but we'd like to know about them.
Matt, if somebody has a specific request related to wire, how do they best reach you guys?
They can do that through Slack, and usually it's the FCC copy desk room is the best room to reach us, or you can just direct email or Slack me. Rob Jeffries will be taking on a lot of the oversight of this as well.
Okay. Any questions about any of that? Okay, we decided this week that we probably could freshen up the way we approach the daily COVID numbers. They get to be quite formulaic unless there's news related to that. JJ, do you want to talk a little bit about what people can expect there, and then we can transition right into what our plans are for Chauvin?
Yeah, sure. So with the daily COVID numbers from the 3 states, and I think North Dakota is going to start pulling back on their weekend reports. The numbers will still be available, but they're not going to be putting out the same email with all the highlights, I guess. So it's probably a good time coming up on the 1 year of COVID, depending on where we measure it, to reevaluate. So this will be a much more numbers heavy at a glance. What I'm doing right now is just working with the FNS reporters from North Dakota and Minnesota and Jeremy Fugelberg in South Dakota to just kind of make sure that we have all the right numbers covered in terms of new cases, total cases, deaths, hospitalizations, and then of course vaccinations. So we'll kind of come up with a template for all those. I'm thinking that what'll happen is probably each one will have a little summary. It sounds like is what the reporters would like to do. Maybe a 1 or 2 sentence kind of thing. And then of course, if the news on the day warrants, then we would still be doing stories as normal. I kind of warned all the reporters in the very first email that, still be looking at all the emails that come in, looking at the data when it's released in the mornings, paying attention to the news conferences as normal, but it may not always end up being a 20-inch story at the end.
Yeah, a good example of something outside the norm happened just yesterday in North Dakota. They found that scary variance there. So, that story was a different kind of story than what we would have normally done for the daily update. So.
Okay, any questions about that? No. If there are,
Alicia's got control of the screen, so Alicia.
Okay, so she's going to flip to the next one.
Can you flip to Chauvin? Thank you.
Chauvin trial. Okay, so this is the first trial in the George Floyd death from last year in Minneapolis. So we know a couple of things, but of course there's a lot sort of happening every day. Jury selection is scheduled to begin on March 8th. They're predicting or anticipating 2 to 3 weeks of jury selection. And it's Sarah Meerhoff, her most recent story that was moved yesterday, said they're anticipating that opening arguments would start on Monday, March 29th. So that's kind of the template we're working from. What you can expect, and we're kind of figuring out all the mechanics of this stuff, is a live stream from the courtroom. This case will be televised and broadcast. I was just on a call with the Minnesota courts that were kind of doing a debrief for reporters and media, and they described it as televised. I don't know if that's just a quirk of how they described it, or if, we're going to work to get a live stream going. Of course, that won't. I'm assuming it will not be for jury selection. That would be wild. But so when the trial does start, that we'd have the live video. We're going to do quick files throughout the day. These will be on your sites. Matthew Gary from FNS will be handling those. He's going to watch the trial and file, however many times a day we think we need, sort of summaries of where we're at, what happened, what's coming up, and doing a lot of contextual stuff. So that'll be what we're doing for our updates. And then we will also have a daily main bar and kind of a narrative story at the end of the day. And I think we've got somebody assigned to that, right, Kirsten?
Yeah, it's Matthew Stoley from Rochester.
Okay. So that'll be different than having one person do everything, but we'll have 2 people listening into the trial to do the reporting. And then finally, we'll have you can expect weekly enterprise and possibly analysis coverage. We've been working at FNS to brainstorm enterprise stories and things that are going to be good topics or jumping off points from the trial for greater Minnesota. There's a lot of stuff we can do with Minneapolis, of course. Don't know all what the appetite will be, but I think our strength will be in writing for our communities that we serve. So Sarah Meerhoff is going to take a lot of those, but we're also going to be kind of spreading those out to interested reporters at various properties. And I think we've talked to a couple of them. And as stories come up, we're going to try to address them as we go. Of course, the legislative session is still going on. So that's what Dana Ferguson is going to concentrate on. And she'll jump off of that when there is something that maybe crosses legislatively and trial. Protest coverage, yes, we're going to have to rely on wire services, Pioneer Press, NPR for some of that stuff. I think you'll see a lot of that kind of thing move on the FNS Digest, but it will be from other sources, depending on how the news kind of breaks up for us. So we will send out a digest with some of this stuff as best I know it. I got to just kind of firm up a couple things with the reporters, but definitely localization is encouraged. We'll probably send out some ideas for the local properties, some ways maybe you can jump off on the case. Maybe that's law enforcement. Maybe that's a diversity group that's started in your community since all this happened. We'd just like to stay in contact about those things because we may find that 3 editors are working on a localization about law enforcement, those might be things that we could grab at FNS and build into another thing that we could send out to more properties. Anything else on that, Kirsten, you wanted me to mention?
Yeah, just a couple of things. It's just worth noting that we're getting quite a bit of help from a number of the properties on this. This is quite an endeavor to put together. So, we're really grateful to the people who are raising their hand and who want to be a part of this. I know, Steve, you've got some updates on what people can expect online, right?
Yeah, we made a little bit of a change here. So this slide is a little bit incorrect. The one that's sent out afterwards will be correct. We are launching a section page on all of the FCC sites. We are going to name it Derek Chauvin Trial, and that'll be a repository for all the coverage that we're doing through the trial, and it will have to be a little. We're also launching a newsletter with that. Marketing is working with us on that. So once that section page is ready, I'll go in and add some archived content that is specific to the Derek Chauvin trial. So we are looking at probably trying to get that out next week. We'll have that as a separate section on the site. So I anticipate that trial coverage will be have this as the home section, and then crime and courts as a secondary section. But we really wanted to be able to do this as a section page, in part because we want to be able to bring that live stream and put that at the top of the page in each of these sections, so people can go there every day and be able to watch the coverage as it unfolds.
One thing I'll mention, I just, because I think we're going to have some more information about some of this stuff from this, they call it a media boot camp with the courts in Minnesota. So there's media from, of course, Minnesota and internationally on this call that's going on right now. And everything's off the record, but they've started giving some pretty good information about stuff. But I dropped in the comments here a link to the court system's Derek Chauvin trial page. So I want to bookmark that because they're going to keep a lot of their documents, everything from jury questionnaire questions to potential witness lists, evidentiary materials, all that kind of stuff. We're going to put it all in one place. And so that link is there, mncourts.gov/media/state of Minnesota v. Derek Chauvin. And also the case number is there too. So they made that part pretty easy for us to keep track. And there's also a place you can sign up for email or text alerts on this particular case as there's developments. So that might be useful for your newsrooms.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions about any of that? No. Okay, we can move on from that. Expect, like JJ said, expect some updates, budget lines, and things like that coming out in the next week or so, I would think. Okay, back to trivia. We might end on time. That's kind of amazing. So in what year was the last time a Forum Daily newspaper did not win the Vance? Does anybody have any guesses? Okay, Kelly says 2018. Don't flip the screen yet, Alicia. Huh? Okay. Nancy's got, okay. Just a little bit more time for guesses? Oh, Rob Beer.
Here's my guess. Here's my guess.
All right. Rob forgot to check the slide deck. Okay. All right, Alicia, you can, let's see the answer. It's closed. 2017. Is that Nancy? Right? I'm trying to think here. Rob, I don't think 2017.99 counts. I think we're gonna give it to Nancy here. All right. I thought we'd have many more people tying on this one. I thought we might have an issue with having to allow more than one trivia question next month, but looks like Nancy it is. So
MVP's already locked it up for 2021 since we're, a month and a half in.
yeah. Oh, that's a good. Hey, wait a minute. Does that mean all these numbers are off? No. Okay, well, the judges are gonna have to weigh in on this. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, well, we'll give you back a few minutes. Oh, Jeff?
I have one question.
Okay.
At one, there was talk about giving editors more cross-publishing access or access to other sites, and that doesn't seem to have happened. And I'm wondering if it's going to happen and when.
Steve, is that you have an answer for
Well,
that?
there are a lot of things to consider in this because it's not as simple as just giving permissions without and letting people do it. So, and we did give some people permissions and then they said they didn't want them, and it confused them because they had too much content in their queue. Jeff, who are you looking at having other than your group?
Well,
I think you actually.
Within our group, people don't have the ability to cross-publish to other newspapers within the Lakes group. So Park Rapids can't post on Detroit Lake site, etc.
Well, I mean, I would suggest going into the into the spreadsheet and making those requests then, because those can be updated.
Okay.
But
All right.
there is some reluctance to just make. First of all, I would love to give everybody access and just step away from it. The problem is that once you do that, any change that, say somebody, I'll just throw out an example. If Brainerd wanted a Duluth story and they go and add it to their website, they're going to impact Duluth. And so unless there's really, really good communication, it's going to create extra work for Duluth because they have the master file. So I'm certainly willing to add, and I don't have any problems adding people. It's just I'd like to give them specifically what they want rather than mass privileges, because it can really confuse and compound the amount of work on the originating property.
All right. Another issue that I understand that one thing that would be nice for editors to have is more access to file art. And if you don't have access to other properties, you can't pull up an eagle photo that was taken by Brainerd, if you're in Alexandria, that kind of thing. So that's another issue we run into.
Well, I would encourage anyone that's on the call that if they have tweaks and changes to who they receive permission from or for, just go ahead and add those into the new user spreadsheet. There's a tab for updates. I do get an email when those are added, so we can make some of those changes. And if there's a lot of them, I may just end up sending out a mass email. That's going to be fairly long, just so that we're not causing too many problems for each other. But it's certainly like photos wouldn't be a big issue because that shouldn't impact anyone. But certainly on the article side. So I just encourage anybody that has either for themselves or maybe an editor within the room, go into that spreadsheet, add those, and I'll try to make those updates as quickly as possible. It's a little bit of a cumbersome process, but it doesn't take all that long. And I'm happy to do it as long as folks know how the backend system works.
Thanks, Steve. All right. If there's nothing else, I think we'll end it here. If anybody has anything, thinks of anything, feel free to shoot me an email. Okay. Bye-bye.